Well, Michelle, when we hit the new year and we decided to do this thing, new year, new guests, we had a few people right at the top of our list. And we knew that these people that are joining us today, these wonderful guests, one, they are so busy. It was going to be tough to squeeze them in. Two, it seems like they're on a cruise every other week. But we couldn't be more excited to have on who we're have joining us today, right?
I know. With Sam and Brian here from DCL Duo, we're just super excited. We live vicariously through you all. So we love hearing about all your adventures. And it's so great. And we're super honored to have you on with us today.
Oh, thank you so much. We're super excited to be here. We love following you guys and interacting with you all on social media in particular. Like, you guys are so positive, and we really try to stay positive as well in the Disney community. And so it's just really nice when we engage with other creators that have sort of a similar mindset to us. So we're super happy to be on your show.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for having us. We're honored to be here. So yes.
Thank you.
Believe me, the honor is all ours. It is Sam. It is Brian from the DCL Duo podcast. They do an amazing show. They started actually after our show. However, I feel as well as they've done with all the things they've accomplished with this show that now I hope our podcast grows up to be like theirs.
That's very sweet of you.
Yeah, that is very kind of you. I hope our podcast lasts as long as yours. So there we go.
Well, you're well on your way. You hit 500 episodes just the other night. Congratulations on that. That's crazy. I think we have 5 more years before we hit 500 episodes. But
we're such slackers in comparison to these go-getters. We love it.
We had a listener friend of ours. He was like, "Oh, thank God you guys stopped putting out a couple episodes for that week because I couldn't keep up with everything." So sometimes it's a curse too. People are like, "I don't have time to listen to all the shows you put out." So yeah.
True.
No,
but we do get a lot of like people, a lot of our loyal listeners who say, you know, I have so much commute time and you're the only podcast that keeps up with my commute time, because we do put out a lot of content and probably more than most podcasters.
Yeah. You put out a ton. Like it's great. It's great to always have that out there. I know I like to listen to podcasts regularly in the morning. So I got a new DCL Duo podcast. Exciting. That's fun stuff. Yeah. It's always good, right?
Absolutely. I can't say it any better.
So let's go ahead and get into, because obviously you are a new year, new guest. I'm sure some of our listeners may know you already, but there's several that probably have not met the DCL Duo. So let's talk about your origin story a little bit. How, one, did you fall in love with cruising, then Disney cruising, and then in particular decide to shift that to this highly successful podcast that you now have?
I'm gonna let Brian take that.
Yeah,
one.
She always lets me do the origin story. And for anyone out there listening, if you do head over to our podcast channel, we actually have an episode titled Origin Story that we did for like another milestone. We had a listener who's a frequent guest that people love. He interviewed us. It was the most uncomfortable episode I've ever done because I was not in control. But
on our own show.
On our own show. Yeah, on our own show. But so the origin story. So I'm going to rewind back. So my parents they loved cruising as a vacation. And so when I was younger, not a kid, they didn't do it when I was really young, but when I was younger, in college, they really started cruising and they would take me. So I'd come home for vacations and we'd go on a cruise. And so I cruised celebrity with them quite a bit. And then met Sam in law school. And my parents were still doing this cruising thing. But went on a few cruises with them. And then we got married and we went on these like crazy cruises with them. We went like Sam's first introduction to cruising was a 14-night Panama Canal cruise on Celebrity, and my dad had gotten the owner's suite off the back of the ship that had like a piano in it, right? And so that was her introduction to cruising.
Yeah, I started at like not just like the high end, but like the long end also of cruising, right? It was a 2-week cruise. Now, to be fair, we were not in that penthouse suite. We were next door in like a junior suite. I mean, it was still a suite. Pantry. It was really nice, but like, but we did not get to stay in the penthouse, but we did get full
We
use
got all
of
the
the
perks.
butler and
We got
all
all the
of that. Yeah.
perks. Yeah, we got
Yeah,
all the perks of
absolutely.
it. So yeah, the butler would come and bring the macaroons. That's when you know you've really made it in cruising. Uh, and then her second cruise was like it was a 13, 14, or maybe it was even a 15 night sailing from San Diego to Hawaii and back. And so like that, and after that we stopped. We stopped cruising, and I embraced this idea that cruising's only for old people. And to be fair, the ships we were on, they were older celebrity ships. One of them just retired. I think it was the Celebrity Millennium, and we were the youngest people on board. And so I just had this in my mind, like, I enjoy this, but it'll be something I do much later in life. So fast forward, I had my 40th birthday in 2018, and I decided, you know what? For my 40th birthday, I want to do something really fun. I want to go on a cruise. And so we called a friend of Sam's, a longtime friend of Sam's that she'd known forever. And he was working in the cruise industry at the time for a cruise line that we will not name. And I said, I want to take a cruise. Who should we cruise with? And he said, no question, you're going on a Disney cruise. And I said, you don't work for Disney Cruise Line. And he said, I know. And I said, and we're not bringing our son with us. And he was like, Brian, I'm a gay man. I have no children. Me and my partner, we cruise Disney. And so I was like, all right, we'll give it a go. And so it turned into the two of us, two of our other friends, and then Sam's friend and his husband. We got on a Disney cruise, and I'll tell you what, the moment we got to the end of the walk onto the ship and they announced our family name and started clapping, I was hooked. Like I was just hooked. And that whole cruise was just fabulous. Soup to nuts service, stateroom. We had friends on board. We dined at Remy together. We had Palo brunch, hung out by the pool. And I was like, and Castaway Key, the first time going to Castaway Key, we had a Serenity Bay Cabana, which really colored the entire day at Castaway Key. And I was like, this is the way I want a vacation. So we followed that cruise up 6 months later with the exact same cruise and itinerary, just different, just the two of us. So we had our son already, P.S., and our first like 3 Disney cruises were without him.
It was just our first two Disney cruises, but they were both Eastern Caribbeans on the Fantasy. And then we did plan for our third cruise, and we took our son on the Disney Wonder out of San Diego. It was a little bit, closer to home trip. And then we just we were cruising like at least every 6 months at that point, like from the time we started until, of course, March of 2020. But Brian had this harebrained idea in about January, I think it was, of 2020, or maybe it was late 2019. Yeah. Brian had this harebrained idea. He had been a guest on several other podcasts, both mostly Disney podcasts, but some cruise line related, some more DVC related, some more parks related. Like he had guested on a few different shows. I think I had guested with him on 1 or 2 of the shows. And he had this harebrained idea, and I'll pass it back to you, Brian.
Yeah, well, my mother told me growing up, if you don't like something and you complain about it, you're volunteering to do it yourself. So I was on a few shows, and I just thought, I feel like we have something unique to offer here that could be fun and a little different. And so I came downstairs one night and I said, we've got this amazing trip to Disneyland planned in March. Wouldn't that be a fun way to kick off we'll be a Disney Cruise Line focused podcast, but we'll do park stuff and fun stuff and unique things that most people don't get to do. So we had planned this VIP tour at Disneyland. And so, yeah, long story short, had a harebrained idea. That night, we were trying to come up with names for it. I came up with DCL Duo, checked social media. It wasn't taken. And I'm like, there it is. We're the DCL Duo. And so, yeah, our first show was about Disneyland, of all things. And then the world shut down.
About a week later, we came home, and I think it was a couple days later that they announced school was closing. And mind you, we live outside of the Seattle area. We live in the Seattle area, just outside of the city in the suburbs. And first pieces of COVID in the U.S., there was an outbreak in a nursing home, right near our house, basically. And so everything in our area shut down immediately. School closed for, of course, 2 weeks, and then they never reopened, not for, more than a year. But yeah, it was actually a blessing though, because not COVID being a blessing and the world shut down, but that was obviously not a blessing for anybody. But
I was going to say that we were undeterred, right? In March when cruising shut down, I could have just said, well, there goes that dream. But instead, what we found was it afforded us 2 things. One, everyone I talked to who'd started a podcast said your first, 20 shows, just throw them away. They're going to be awful. You got to find your voice. You got to figure out what you're doing, all this sort of stuff. Well, we had low pressure 20 shows. Like, what did I like?
What do we have to lose?
What do we have to lose, right? And at the same time, I think the two things that it really afforded us, one was we were stuck at home, nothing to do, couldn't go anywhere, and so lots of extra time on our hands outside of work, and so it really afforded me the ability to kind of learn the craft a little bit, learn the equipment, learn how to edit, all this sort of stuff. And then the second thing was we reached out to a bunch of people who would normally be out there cruising, so busy with their own podcasts, blogs, vlogs, whatever, who just didn't have anything to do and were desperate to talk to somebody about cruising. And so we had a lot of people on in the early shows, including some, folks that I totally fanboyed out on who they just didn't have, they had time on their hands and they needed people to talk to, wanted people to talk to. And so it enabled us to develop a lot of relationships with other creators and cruisers out there and such to kind of build that that stable of people that we know and we rely on today. So it was a blessing and a curse. And then once cruising started again, we went
jumped back on.
Went back with a vengeance. I think we were cruising like every other month at one point. We were on a Disney cruise as the ships restarted. And so that also accelerated our trip from 2018 to today. I've been on 30 cruises with Disney. Sam's been on 28.
29,
and our son's been on 25. And so so we hit Pearl status really fast on the cruise line, and that's kind of the story.
And our listenership, I think, also grew that year because people wanted to hear about cruising. They couldn't go on the ships, right? So they wanted to at least live vicariously through other people's stories. And so we were able to tell cruising stories and some other Disney stories. We really now focus very much more so on cruising than we did at the start. At the start, we were just trying to get, like, let's be honest, whatever guests were willing to come on, right? And now we've really focused our show on Disney cruising. We'll do some sort of crossover into other cruising, like on other lines, and kind of do compare and contrast episodes. And then we also like to cover Adventures by Disney. For those who don't know, Adventures by Disney is Disney's, I'll call it group tour company. And it is a luxury white glove service, meaning you book your flights, they take care of everything else. They pick you up at the airport, they take you to the hotel, they book almost all of your food is included. And it's guided touring around the world by Disney. And they do river cruising, but they do land trips as well. So we like to cover Adventures by Disney because we feel like Disney cruising is often the gateway drug to Adventures by Disney, sometimes vice versa. But there's a lot of crossover in the people who sail on Disney Cruise Line and the people who take Adventures by Disney adventures. So
yeah, and the last thing I'll just say about our show and Sam said as we were talking off air, like and even at the beginning of the show, like our philosophy is we like to build a positive community. So like our goal in starting the show was we have a special needs son, and he was taking a lot of time from us as a couple, and we're happy to give it, but I wanted to find a way for us to spend some time together and connect as a couple, and cruising was one way we could do that. And the other way was I thought, if we have a dedicated time every week where we sit down and we're talking about something that we like, then we get that time together. And so that has really that was really the sort of the genesis of it for me. And then the outgrowth of that's been so great is like all of the people that we have met, including now Tom, Michelle, you two as well, like who are just great people to know in this community and that we love talking to and sailing with and having dinner with and catching up with at the parks, wherever it is. So that has been sort of the best part of this entire show is the people we've met and the time that we get to spend together, because a lot of people we really try to emphasize this when we can. We're not travel agents. We don't make, like, you were joking off air about the sweet podcasting. There is no sweet podcasting money. This is just a labor of love. And we're not TAs. We don't make our money that way. We have day jobs as lawyers in the Seattle area. And so, we do this because we love it. And in some ways that was kind of the unique voice we hope to bring was, folks who aren't travel agents who can talk about the experience and share it as like, we're cruisers. And this is what we think of it, sort of unfiltered and unbiased. So, yeah.
Well, it's an excellent show. If you've never listened to the DCL Duo on their podcast, it's fantastic. You have plenty of opportunities. They're doing episodes all the time, but great stuff. bringing guests on that have done various different cruises all the time, and it's really, really good, right, Michelle?
Absolutely. I do want to say something about your origin story. It's something that I was touched with one of your episodes. And Sam, I know you were talking about how you were not surprised that Brian would go all in on something like this, and that's his personality.
Yes,
and I thought that was so
100%.
touching to hear. The other thing I want to mention, and you talk about your son, but Nathan is adorable. And my gosh, when he comes on your show, I mean, he can talk. I mean, he's
a star. He's a star.
He is smooth.
I know.
Yeah.
I am learning some of the terms because of him. Some of the current terms. That's good.
I love it. No, he's fantastic. He's 11. He's on the autism spectrum and also has ADHD. We're very open about talking about his disabilities. He's very open about talking about them. He knows their disabilities, but he also thinks of them as superpowers, which they are. He's really, really bright. He's super verbal. He's just a joy, honestly. I mean, we had struggles, so I don't want to sugarcoat it. We had some real rough struggles, particularly earlier on before the diagnoses, because we just didn't know what we were doing and how to best parent him, really, and some behavioral challenges, let's be honest. But he is really amazing. He's so come into his own. It's so much fun when he comes on the show. When he used to come on the show, he'd give one-word answers, and occasionally he'll still do that. But when he really warms up and gives, a more full answer, and really, he can be such a ham and he can be such a star. So I love that. I'm not trying to make him a YouTube star or anything like that. But
although that was his career ambition,
is actually he wants to be a YouTuber, but he doesn't want to do a Disney Cruise Line podcast YouTube. He wants to be a gaming YouTuber, or like Mr. Beast or something like that. So but anyway, he's really fun, and it's really wonderful when we have him on the show. We don't have him on the show that very often. It's usually though when we sail, we'll try to get his impressions, because a lot of the time people want to hear from the kids' perspective. And so he's been in the kids clubs, and now he's in the tween club Edge on board, and he is obsessed with it. And so it's just been really fun to watch him grow and mature on the ships, as well as, of course, at home.
Along those lines, some of the most fun episodes that we get to do, and some of the most humbling, one is we get people reaching out from outside the United States who want to come on the show, and I'm just I'm really so blown away that my dad isn't our only listener out there. And so
actually, he doesn't listen to us. He listens to Emma Cruises.
He listens to Emma Cruises, so he knows who. He would say, "Do you know this Emma Cruises person? She's been on the show twice, Dad." And so, so I'm floored when someone from we had Australia, the UK, we had someone reach out to us from the Netherlands. But also people come on and they want to bring their kids, and their kids want to be on. And I'm like, as long as your parents are okay with it, and we're all as
long as the parents are on too,
our audience loves to hear from the kids, and we love to have them on to hear their perspective, because ultimately if Disney Cruise Line is going to separate you from your money, it's going to be because your kids are standing there going, we want to go on a Disney cruise.
True.
It's so true. So true.
Well, it's so interesting because I feel like there's so much that we have in common here. One, we have a special needs son as well. Also, Michelle will tell you that when I came up with the idea to do the podcast, harebrained was very much the term for it.
I love it.
And also, this is our date time every single week when we get together and we do our shows talking Disney. So completely relate to you.
Yeah.
Now, before we get into a little bit into the real meat of the Disney cruising, I need to talk about another form of cruising that you were lucky enough to do that I did not get the chance to do. And I'm so still to this day completely hurt by it that I never got, because we were like, okay, we got to do this, but it's going to be around for a while. We have these other plans. We'll take care of it. And then
and it was so expensive.
It was out of the expense. Fine. We'll splurge on this. I'm a Star Wars fan. I wanted to do this. Tell us about the Galactic Star Cruiser. It wasn't that great, right? It was just not very good.
I've got my boarding pass right here. My Halcyon boarding pass. It was
incredible, Tom.
It is the most divisive single thing that Disney has ever done. I will just start with that. I will say we fall on the line of, once we did it, and we understood it and we experienced it. We got off that ship and we're in the pool at the Riviera just relaxing because it was so exhausting of an experience, but in the pool at the Riviera. And Sam, I hope she doesn't mind me saying, Sam is the penny pincher in our household. She like
True.
she likes nice things, nice experiences, but she looked at that Star
But I don't
Cruiser
like to
price
spend
tag and
money
was
on
like,
them.
"What are we buying here? Like, what is this thing?" So we got into the backstory. We got costumes. We had a whole thing. We got on the ship. We did everything that actually we had Lynn Testa on the show to give us like prep us for what to do. And did everything that he suggested we did. We got off. We were in the pool at the Riviera, and Sam was like, "I'd do it again."
Yeah, I was like, is there like
I
a
was
way we
like,
can figure out how to get on? Because we actually booked right after they announced the closure, right? So they announced the closure and they had a date that they had sort of paused bookings and then they had a date that they were reopening bookings. We called our travel agent and we were like, we want to book for these dates. Like as soon as this thing opens for booking, like get us on it because we're like, we want to, we had thought we had, like you thought, we thought we had like years to do it. We were kind of waiting till Nathan was a little bit older. It wasn't a pricey experience for, only a couple days. So we were like, this is probably not what we should do right now, but we definitely want to do it at some point in the future. Well, as soon as that was announced that we wouldn't be able to, we're like, we have to do it. We ended up sailing at the end of July of 2023 and they were closing at the end of September. And so we did look at the calendar to figure out like is there another time we can go and honestly there just wasn't. And it sold out pretty quick as well. So it wasn't like there were a ton of options available.
But Tom, to your question, I will say this. That experience was like the very best of everything that did. Like they pulled everything together, the theming, the technology that they built in, the experience. Like you thought you were in space, looking at some of this stuff. The cast and crew were
the
some
characters.
of the. I love Disney Cruise Line, but the cast and crew were above and beyond anything I've ever experienced at Disney. And all of them were like part of the price tag problem was all of them are Actors Guild actors. So like the person serving you your drink was in character serving you your drink. And they would not break character. Like we asked one of the bartenders, like, you
Where
must
you
be,
from?
you must be kind of bummed that, this is shutting down. And she was like, oh, that we're going into a dry dock in a couple of months. We're all excited to see what they do with the ship in the dry dock kind of thing. And like, they would not break their character. And the food was top notch and inventive. Like it's Disney Cruise Line sometimes or at the parks. I'm sort of looking like, can we just do something a little different, and they did it on the Star Cruiser, experiencing Galaxy's Edge after being like as a Star Cruiser passenger was one of the best Galaxy's Edge experiences I've
It's
ever
completely
had.
different because you're doing missions while you're there. So
I forgot that I was in Hollywood Studios. Like
we didn't leave Galaxy's Edge. We didn't go to the rest of like other people. We've heard like people go like ride Slinky Dog Dash or do something else within Hollywood Studios. We didn't leave Galaxy's Edge. We were like we need to get all of our missions done and then get back onto the ship, right? Like take the shuttle back to the ship, right? So we spent like our half day in Galaxy's Edge, got all of our missions done, and we even went back to have lunch because the food we had actually vouchers. We could get a Ronto wrap. No, we love a Ronto wrap. Let's be honest. But the food was so good on the Star Cruiser. We're like, we don't want to miss lunch on the Star Cruiser, and that's like part of our voyage, right? It's like being on a cruise. It's an all-inclusive voyage with food, not with alcohol. But it was fantastic, really incredible.
I kept hoping they might do like a limited run, like bring it back for a few months and do another limited run. Because I think the fervor in the community that did it and our fans, it would book up instantly. And if they ever did that, I would be first in line. I'd throw elbows to get on that ship again. It was amazing.
We'd be second.
Yeah. And to be fair, we're not even like the
biggest Star Wars fans.
The biggest I like to call us casual Star Wars fans. Like we've seen all of the movies. We have watched all of the TV shows, except actually Ahsoka. I don't think we've watched live action, I should say. But we're not like, we don't watch the animated series like Bad Batch or the Clone Wars or any of that. Like we're not like hardcore deep divers. And, again, we're casual. Like my favorite Star Wars movie is Rogue One. So that tells you what kind of Star Wars fan I am, I feel like.
Yeah. Well, I'm telling you, what you said is what we've heard from everybody that's ever been on it. It's the same thing. You're like, okay, we're going to splurge on this thing this one time, but it's going to be a one and done. And then they get off of it and they're like, we have to do this again. Like everything about it, the people who mostly critiqued it, in my opinion, were people who never got on it. The people who got on it were like, this is amazing. This is the best thing Disney has ever done. Yes, it's ridiculously priced, but it was something that we needed to give ourselves a crack at, right, Michelle?
Right, absolutely. Yeah. And I think everybody who went on it realized why the price was at the point that it was. And so people who didn't go on it just said, well, wait a minute, a 2-day cruise, I can go anywhere on a 2-day cruise for a lot less. And I think that was also a challenge with marketing.
Yeah, the biggest problem they faced was a marketing problem. I had a friend say this to me, and after doing it, I was like, I totally get it now. Once it got labeled a Star Wars hotel, the wheels just came off, right? It was not. It was they should have been this is a Star Wars experience. That's the word they needed. And once
it's immersive dinner theater for 2 whole days. Right. Like that's like that is like the best description I can give any person. And you have to be one of those people who is at least somewhat willing. You don't have to be like a deep diver, but you have to be somewhat willing to like put yourself into the experience, because if you do, you got to do more things, right? Like, so if you interacted with the characters directly, you would get invited to special missions and special meetings and things like that. You would be a part of a heist. I know it sounds crazy, but you'd be like all of these things you get to do.
I had to propose to Sam.
Yeah,
I had to propose to Sam in the atrium of the Star Cruiser as a distraction, so they could steal something from the other side.
So a heist could take place. Exactly. So like you had to interact with these different characters, or you wouldn't have gotten invited to these things. So you could have a very different experience depending upon who you interacted with. But also, if you didn't interact with any of the characters, you would have had probably not nearly as good of an experience. So I do think there are probably some people who went on it who were critical of it, in part because of the price, but because they didn't really experience it to the full extent because they didn't put themselves out there. And Brian is an introvert. I know he plays an extrovert on TV. When I say TV, I mean on the podcast. But like for him, it takes pushing himself to like do those things. For me, it's like natural. It's like I'll talk to the wall if the wall looks nice. But so it's one of those things where you have to go in it though knowing, okay, I'm gonna have to push myself if I'm a bit of an introvert, and just so that I can have that kind of experience. And there are other experiences, other immersive, theater type experiences that I think have that same flavor. They're just usually a lot shorter than 2 days.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if they had put it under the Adventures by Disney platform or something like that. If maybe that changes the perception of it a little bit. I don't know what they could have done, but I'm just I was mourning for a long time, and that went away that I didn't get the opportunity. I mean, ask her. I was mourning. But I'm so glad
we're still mourning, and we did get the opportunity. So Tom, we wanted to do it like over and over and over again. Yeah,
we came home and like decorated our house in Halcyon. We have a house, one of the comforters that somebody made that's a replica from the Star Cruiser on our bed. So we love that experience.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now, if only they could have gotten even just a piece of that in the hyperspace lounge on the Wish. I mean,
it's fine. The bar that they had on the Halcyon, the Sublight Lounge, after I saw it, I was like, this is what the bar on the Wish needs to look like. And so when they closed the thing, I was actually like, can we just take that out and put it on the Wish then? Because you're not using it, and it's way better. And so,
especially the sabacc table. They had a really cool
holographic sabacc table.
Oh, that's right. I heard about that. Yeah. I mean, I was okay with the hyperspace lounge on the Wish, but it seems like it could be so much more, And
what it really lacks that I think they had on the Star Cruiser was for whatever reason the drinks in these like tech bars that they've got since the Fantasy are just not great. So, but what I wanted was like real themed drinks in that lounge instead of like they had that whole the crazy drink. They had the Kyber crystal, and then they come over and they open it up and they're like, so we've got Maker's Mark, and I was thinking like they had Maker's Mark and stuff. Like, how do they get to Earth? And then the bartenders, they aren't in character, and I was like, Sublight Lounge. they're in character. And so like,
Right.
can we give them a backstory and, have them play a character a little bit? And
Sure.
so
Obviously tough to accomplish that with, the cast members on a Disney cruise, I mean,
although they
the
have
movie
done
aren't
it,
out.
they have done it now with the Haunted Mansion Bar and the Skipper Society. They have
Well,
pulled it off. I think they've
well,
pulled.
but not with the cast is still not immersive in that sense.
I will disagree with you there because like
Wow.
when we were in the Haunted Mansion Bar, if you ordered water in the hyperspace lounge, we're like, okay, and they go get you water. In the Haunted Mansion Bar, if you said I'd like water, they'd be like, oh, we'll go drain some from the fish tank, and then they would come
That's
back
true.
and they would be like. They'd be like, "Be careful, it's a little cursed," kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or like the Skipper Society, they were trying to be punny, like they were trying to be a little. They weren't.
It
It wasn't
depends on the
perfect. They're
yeah, it
trying.
depends on the cast member. I will say that's one thing, Disney Cruise Line has one international cast, right?
Right.
And so it's a little bit different and so the puns that we get on Jungle Cruise in the parks. I'm wearing my Skipper Society t-shirt, of course.
Nice.
But the puns you get in the parks are like well rehearsed and your skippers are really, really good. And same with the folks at Trader Sam's as well. They are all, they're all failed skippers basically. But that part doesn't completely translate. But what does translate much better on the Treasure than on the Wish is the immersiveness of the spaces, at least. So even though I would say, I know Brian and I differ a little bit on this, but even though I don't think the cast members are part of that immersiveness, except for their outfits. Their costumes are fantastic. But I do think that the spaces are much more immersive than hyperspace on the Wish. So fantastic spaces. I know we'll get into that a little bit more.
Yeah.
Well, let's go ahead. This is the perfect time to
right.
transition to
Yeah.
it.
There we
Let's go
go.
ahead. You were on the maiden voyage of the Treasure. Sam, you were also on a preview voyage on the
right.
Treasure. So you've had full experience of this brand new Disney ship. Tell us all about it. What did you like? What could they do better? What did you think of the Disney Treasure?
Well, I'll start with the layout. So if somebody went on the Wish and you absolutely hate the layout, guess what? The Treasure has the same layout. So I hope that you don't hate the layout of the Wish, but if you do, I'm sorry to tell you, there's really not a change in it to that on the Treasure. But what the Treasure does that the Wish doesn't do is it just takes the theming and the decor and the carpets and I mean everything like from like I don't know a 7 to an 11. Like it is just incredible. Like they did such a good job and you can tell, the Wish was impacted by, COVID delays and, with materials, with staff, with ordering, like everything was delayed and that
Value engineering.
yeah,
Value.
right. So everything was impacted by that for the Wish. And the Treasure doesn't have any of that. It has no remnants of COVID pandemic shutdown. The Treasure, just everything is so much more done. I mean, the ship was completely ready. We heard it was ready before the crossing, whereas the Wish, the theater wasn't even built until during the crossing, right? So
Bare
like
steel girders. Yeah.
yeah. So like which means that it doesn't just mean the spaces weren't ready, but it also means the cast isn't able to rehearse and practice in their spaces. And so that really impacts operations. And also the Treasure is the second of its kind, right? The Wish was the first of its kind because Treasure is a Wish class ship. So with the layout and operations, they're able to take everything that they figured out the kinks on the Wish and put it onto the Treasure, right? So like it was just a much more ready ship in every way, shape, and form. And then, like I said, with the theming, they just took it to a whole nother level. With the shows, they took it to a whole nother level. I mean, the two best shows on Disney Cruise Line, two best stage shows on Disney Cruise Line in the Walt Disney Theater are on the Treasure now. And that is Tale of Moana and Beauty and the Beast. Beauty and the Beast was ported over from the Dream. It's still on the Dream. It's still just as good on the Dream. But now you have the two best shows on one ship. And I mean, you can't beat that. And of course, it's doing 7-night cruises.
Well,
so
yeah. Don't steal my
beat that.
Don't steal my
Sorry.
thunder. Don't steal. I was going to
Sorry,
say
I haven't even talked about the bar spaces, but I'll let Brian jump in.
No,
I could talk forever.
I'm going to make a very simple comment. I think that the biggest thing the Treasure has going for it is that it's 7-night cruises, because what that means is more time. So the spaces aren't as like slammed and oversubscribed every night. Like Haunted Mansion Bar on the Maiden was busy night 1 and part of night 2. And by night 3, we could go in there and sit in the best seats in the house, for the rest of the sailing, right? On the Wish, you have the problem of it's slam night 1, it's slam night 2, and now we're getting off, right? And so the 7 nights opens that up. The other thing the 7 nights does, which is just fantastic, is it forces Disney to provide more things to do, more entertainment. So the Wish, I forget the name of the characters, but the Wish has these 2 characters associated with it who are meant to be these like entertainers who do like
like storytellers, I think
storytellers
right.
and things like that. And they're supposed to do the shows on the stage in the atrium, but that's pretty much it. And you hardly kind of like the times we've been on the Wish, we've hardly kind of seen them interact with them. The Treasure has up-leveled this. So they have these 2 characters, Coriander and Sage. Shout out to the 2 actors who play them. They were fantastic. Some of the, like, you're talking about a ship that has Moana, Stage Show, and Beauty and the Beast, and they were still some of the best entertainment on board. And they had to do more shows, so they're using the atrium for these like special shows around. Like they had a Jungle Cruise game show, where they put people in like 2 Jungle Cruise boats, and each of them is a skipper, and they have to do challenges and stuff. And you can watch this. They took Sarabi, which is the kind of the main theater, adult theater on the ship, and they did this thing called Indiana Jones, like choose wisely, and they killed it. It's simple entertainment, but it's fun. It's tongue in cheek. They get a little adult with it. Like it was great to have these added entertainment options that I haven't seen anywhere else in the fleet. And to now kind
and they tell the tale of Aladdin in the atrium as well on that stage. It's kind of the only thing I think we can compare it to is in Disneyland. There's that theater. I was going to ask you if
that's
Royal Theater.
Yes, I was going to ask you, Mr. Smythe.
Yes. So in the Royal Theater, they tell, I think, Beauty and the Beast and Rapunzel.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so, and it's 2 actors that do the entire show. And that's the only thing I can kind of compare it to, but they've ported this onto the ship. Anyway, I'm sorry. I think I interrupted Brian. I forget what you were saying.
I think that entertainment is that aspect of it. It's the difference. Like it's the difference between kind of the Wish and the Treasure. Like as Sam said, everything is amped up. Just everything. It is. We were on the ship and the captain called it the crown jewel of the fleet. When we asked, oh, funny, yeah, okay, sure. But after sailing on, I'm like, that is the crown jewel of the Disney fleet, and I would seek that ship out above all others to get back on, especially since she's doing the 7-night sailings. The Wonder. We loved the Wish, by the way. I know a lot of people didn't like it. I think we really kind of enjoyed the Wish, and it has its challenges. I don't want to sugarcoat that. But the Treasure is like top ship down. The Wonder used to be in probably our top slot, and now she's second, and the Wish fell from like 1 or 2 to the bottom of the list at this point. So yeah.
Well, and then food, of course, is like up leveled too, and the dining experiences, of course, having Coco on board is a fantastic new addition to the fleet. 1923 is still, a good sort of staple restaurant, and then listen,
there's some. Tom asked about some challenges, and I just want to say the second night menus, except for Coco.
Oh, yes, the second night menus. Actually, I prefer the second night menu of Marvel. The first night menu of Marvel, I don't think is that great. I think the second night menu of Marvel is better. The second night menu of 1923 is not good. It's the lobster night, and I'm sorry, Disney Cruise Line. No cruise line does lobster night well. I don't know why people get excited for lobster night. You're going to have overcooked, chewy lobster. I love lobster. I do not eat lobster. Every time I've ordered lobster on a cruise ship, and I did on the preview cruise because I was like, I haven't had it in a long time. I should, give it another chance. No, it was overcooked and rubbery. It's not good. Don't order lobster on a cruise ship unless you're in a specialty dining, I guess. If you're in specialty dining, that's different. If you're in main dining, it's being they're cooking 1,000 of them at once. So they're all going to be overcooked and rubbery. So that 1923 menu, second night menu, not good. The first night menu is good.
Coco is good and has some hits. Has my new favorite dessert. Yeah. Has my new favorite dessert in the fleet, the Tres Leches cake. Yeah. Oh my God, so good. But a friend of mine said something that really resonated with me, which is they're trying too hard. They're just just give us some simple Mexican fare, Tex-Mex fare, even maybe. Like they've got that on the second night as appetizers. You can get enchiladas and stuff like that. And I was like, if I came back again, I'd probably just order a whole bevy of the appetizers as my
Yeah.
meal. Because everything else is just feeling like they're trying to fit in that footprint of, okay, we need a chicken, a fish, a pork, a steak, a veggie, right? And I think you could have accomplished that by doing like, we're going to have cheese enchiladas, your choice of meat, or have a chicken quesadilla, a cheese enchilada, a beef taco, whatever it is. But it's just it's a little too fancy. So yeah.
One of the things when you were explaining about your experience on the Treasure and comparing it to the Wish, what I interpreted was that you felt some of the changes that they made on the Treasure made the flow, because I think that was of the people easier than what goes on the Wish. And I think that was the thing we observed on the Wish. And even in talking with a lot of cast members on the Wish, one of which was a tour guide, said it's kind of clunky. And it sounded like when you were describing how they moved like the bar in the was it the Scat Cat
Oh, Scat
Lounge?
Cat. Yeah.
And things like that to open up to the grand ballroom and things like that, that it just kind of helped facilitate the flow better. Is that what your observation was?
In some
It-
ways, in some ways, yes, and in some ways, no. So what's interesting is by adding that bar, they created a little weird bottleneck for one of the photo opportunities over there. What I think what they actually did, less about flow and more about space. So the Nightingales on the Wish, just it feels small because of the way the bar is designed, whereas the Scat Cat Lounge just feels like it's more seating, more tables, more places to sit. More ways to get a drink if you just want to grab a drink and go without having to come into the lounge. It's the same for the Periscope pub. Frankly, the way they positioned that bar opened up a lot more table space in the lounge, which I think helps it. I think the problem with flow that some people experience is like all of the Disney ships leading up to the Wish kind of had a similar layout. Things were kind of in similar places, right? Like, the adult area was all in one place. I think what they were trying to do with the Wish, and we had an Imagineer on the show who was involved in the design of the Wish, and we also talked to some folks on the Wish Maiden who were involved in the design. I think what they were trying to do with the Wish was spread the crowds out, which then creates its own issues, right? So, like they did a bunch of traffic. People complain about the elevators. What's funny is there are more elevators on the Wish and the Treasure than there are on any other of the ships in the fleet. And they did this traffic study apparently where they decided, well, when people get on the ship and they see a bank of elevators, that becomes their elevators. And so the midship elevators are getting oversubscribed. We need to get people out of the Grand Hall area to a different set of elevators. That will become their set of elevators going forward. And so that was the idea behind it. In execution, I think a lot of Disney Cruise Line fans got on these ships and were like, well, where's the midship elevators? Why is this bar here and not here? Where's the adult space? Why is the adult pool so small? Right? And it's just, they're used to a particular kind of experience. And this experience was very, very, very different. That said, I will just say, I think they made some really smart decisions in the layout of the Wish and the Treasure that I know people give them credit for, but sometimes I'm like, I don't think you give them enough credit. So like putting the kids club on deck 2, the smartest thing they could have ever done.
Brilliant.
That prime real estate that had ocean views, it was just kind of like, dedicated to kids club. Putting it on deck 2, brilliant. Enclosing the basketball courts to make the Hero Zone, which is now a multi-purpose space that can be used all day. Brilliant. Like, I mean, I know it's not like a novel idea, but just like,
Sure.
thank you for doing that. Right. Right.
Right.
And a lot of people complain about the pool deck. It has its limitations, but putting different kinds of pools in different places around the deck means you don't have one main pool with everyone there trying to stare up at funnel vision. People can have a pool to dangle their feet in and watch funnel vision. Kids can have a pool to swim in. The adult space is now fully separated. Like, so a lot of people complain on the fantasy, the dream, the wonder, the magic. Oh, there's kids that are walking through the adult area. Well, because there's sometimes no,
No
way
other
to
way
get
to
from
walk
point A to
through.
B.
Right, right.
You have to walk through.
And so now we put it on the back of the ship. It is small. I'm not going to lie. It is smaller, right? But it's on the back of the ship. No kids walk through that area because there's no reason for them to even begin to be back there, right? So like there are decisions they made that were deliberate that people don't like, and I get it. But like we like to step back and say like, there's also some just really smart stuff that they did.
Yeah.
So,
I think though the flow though may just be a fact of crowds, right? Like these are crowded ships. These, they're bigger. They have more passengers. And so, and on the Wish, it suffers from the fact that it's a 3 and 4 night cruise. So everyone wants to be at every event because they don't want to miss anything, right? They're trying to pack a 7 night cruise into 3 or 4 nights or 7 nights of activities, right?
Right.
And so I think that's one of the issues. But, the Grand Hall, when there's events there, it gets crowded, right? But so does the atrium on the Fantasy, the Dream, the Magic, and the Wonder, right? So you can't move if there's some kind of like dance party or deck party that got moved into the atrium. Like it's wall to wall people. You have to be there 20 to 30 minutes early to get a spot at the railing, right? Like that's a thing on all of the ships. But I do think whatever ship has the shorter itinerary always seems to have like the worst crowd issues, no matter what the layout, just because everybody, like I said, is trying to shove 7 nights of activities into 3 or 4 nights.
Sure.
I think me personally, now it sounds like we're picking on the Wish a little bit here, and we're not, because maybe the Wish isn't our favorite Disney ship, but it's still a Disney ship. It's pretty darn good. It's better than...
She's beautiful.
Yeah,
It's better than a day at home, right?
Exactly. My biggest, I think, issue with it when we went on it is that some of the areas didn't seem to, not necessarily talking about passenger traffic or anything like that, guest traffic, but the theming seemed to not flow right. Like the Bayou is right next to the Hyperspace Lounge, which seemed an odd combination to me. And there were a couple of these other things. I think from what my impression is, and you can tell me if I'm right or wrong on this, kind of the way the concept of what they decided to put into the treasure seems to work a little better, at least closer theming wise.
Yeah, I mean, because at least you're jumping from one ride to another, right? You're going from the Jungle Cruise ride themed bar to the Haunted Mansion. So they're completely different themes. Their themes do not go together at all. And one is in New Orleans Square, right? And the other is in Adventureland in the parks. But there is more cohesion because they're at least both rides, right? So they're both themed to park rides. But I don't think they worry too much about the spaces sort of coordinating with each other. And even, if we think about the treasure being adventure themed, does the Haunted Mansion parlor really fit adventure theming? No, not really.
That's what I was going to say.
I know, like 5-year-old me would have said, yes, that was an adventure to go through.
Yeah. Sure. But it's not adventure theming in the way that we think of Adventureland or Frontierland, right? Like it doesn't, those lands feel more adventure theming. But I don't think it matters because it's such a home run, that Haunted Mansion parlor, that it doesn't matter, that it doesn't really quite fit with the rest, with all of the theming, but not every space does.
I think the problem here is in part that they said that the theme of the ship is adventure.
Right.
And really the theme of the ship is that everything's coming from a theme park. Because if you look at it, you say, well, if it's adventure, then why is the Moana Tower Suite on the Wish and not on the ship that has the Moana stage show that's themed to the adventure? They've got an Epcot themed tower suite on the ship. And it's like, okay, because what you're really saying is you're drawing inspiration from each of the theme parks, right? That's what you're really going for. But because they labeled it adventure, then like Sam was saying, I kind of quibble with, why does the Haunted Mansion fit into this theming? Right, that kind of thing. So yeah, but Disney has this problem we joke about on the show all the time. Like the treasure's theme is adventure, and then they announce the Disney Adventure, and the Disney Treasure has a special theme song that's called "Seize the Adventure." And we're like, why doesn't the Adventure have the "Seize the Adventure" theme song? So sometimes it's sort of like you look at it and you go, why? I think the other thing that I worry or not worry about, I quibble with Disney around is the Destiny's coming. Destiny's coming in November, and they're recycling the Haunted Mansion bar onto the Destiny. I think that was an opportunity to do something new and different, and I think they had ideas that they could have put, the Tony Stark theme bar, I think could have worked as a Haunted Mansion parlor, or frankly, the Doctor Strange theme lounge that they're building. They already have the model for what that could look like in a tech bar in the kids club because they've got the Doctor Strange doors and you can turn the handles and they take you to far-flung places. So like, I was looking at it going like, Haunted Mansion on the ship about heroes and villains, like there is no defined hero or villain in the Haunted Mansion, right? So like that always sort of that piece of it bothers me when they sort of recycle things and it doesn't fit the theme. So yeah.
But we think they probably overspent on the Haunted Mansion parlor.
Oh,
So
it's
maybe
way over the
that's
top.
why. So it's like maybe cost cutting for the Destiny by, just cookie cutter putting it onto the next ship. Because yeah, once you spend that kind of money on theming and design and all of that, it just kind of makes sense from a fiscal standpoint. So that might be really where that's coming from.
And it did sound like you loved all the details in the Haunted Mansion lounge.
Oh my
Amazing.
God, they're so good. And I bet we haven't even them all. Like that I was on the ship for 10 nights between the preview cruise and the maiden voyage. And so I was in there, I don't know, at least a half dozen times. And I would guess that I did not see every detail or every effect that happens, right? So it's like, I want to say it's maybe like a 45-minute rotation of the different effects, but you got it, but you're in different places on, in the bar. It's not a huge space, but like there's different things going on with the paintings, with one of the porthole windows. There's, there's, I don't want to describe it all, but there's so many things happening. And the mirror, really the bar, the wall behind the bar, Madame Leota and a ton of other stuff happens on there. And so, yeah, there's just so many details. I'm sure we missed a ton of them, to be perfectly honest, but it's really incredibly done.
Well, well, one more thing. The Moana show.
Yeah.
We love Moana. Tell us about the Moana show. We've just heard nothing but good things.
Sam is our Broadway expert, so
Oh.
I will just say, as the person who typically goes and gets a drink in the bar while the show is, I see each show once, and then after that, I go get a drink in the bar.
This is
I will
true.
go back to Moana probably every time.
Wow.
It is just, it's so good, and they really, I mean, they hyped up the big puppet of Taka that they've made. I feel like they undersold it because, like,
They
once you see it in
undersold
person, you're
it.
like, "Oh my god, this thing is amazing!" And then it has its like a trick up its sleeve at the end, and you're just like, "What just happened?" And so it was to
It's
be on
so
a
good.
cruise ship and see that quality of a stage production happen. It's unbelievable. It's a really it has raised the bar, in my opinion, for stage shows for Disney Cruise Line. So like Hercules on the Destiny has a huge bar to overcome now. So yeah.
Oh yeah. It's honestly incredible. It's such a wonderfully produced show. I mean, it's got great music in it to start with, right? Because you port that all over from the movie. They added a song. I'd say the song that they added is just okay. It's called Warrior Face. It's not as good as the rest of the music. Let me put it that way, but it's not bad. But there's like a special effect that happens during that. So you're not really paying that much attention to the music because you're paying attention to the special effect that's happening. It's kind of a fun thing that kids will enjoy. I don't want to give too much, spoilers, but there's some characters missing. So if you're looking for some of our little sidekick friends, I hope you don't get too disappointed because they're missing. But it's so well done. And I will give one spoiler away in that the way that they do the water is through dancers. So the water is always represented by people dancing and movement. And it is just, it's incredible. It's like, it's so well done. It's like what you would see in, amazing companies in New York City, right? Like you would, like if you think of like the Alvin Ailey Dance Company, or you think of Dancers at Juilliard, or you think of the New York City Ballet, like the dancers are so incredibly talented, and the way that they represent water in this show is so moving and so wonderful. And of course, you still have, some Disney puppetry. You've got some fun characters. You've got some fun special effects. And then you have the star, who is Moana, of course. And she is an actress from Hawaii, and she is just incredible. Now, I don't know how long she's on the ship for. I don't know when she goes home and a new Moana will come on. But the woman who plays Moana she is Moana. Like, I cannot think of it any other way. Her voice is incredible. She looks the part. And she's a star. She's amazing. And I don't know I hope they will find whenever she leaves for her next, when she goes on her vacation, like I hope the next Moana that they have, ready to come take her spot is as good. I don't know if they can possibly be, because that's how good she is. Yeah.
Really cool. Yeah. I mean, we don't have a cruise currently booked on the Treasure.
Oh, you got to book one.
We're
We have
booked
it
on the Destiny already, but we're not booked
There
on the
you go.
Treasure yet. But we've been since hearing your reports and what everybody's been saying, we've been thinking about it. Now we have to think even harder about it. Right,
Yeah,
Michelle?
yeah,
For
we're
sure.
trying to fit it in. We got that DVC member cruise at the end of the year. It's like, where do we fit it?
Oh, you know,
Are you booked on the maiden for the Destiny? Because if you have, I will just say
No.
this for you and your listeners, the Wish was a bit of a disaster of a maiden voyage. The Treasure was like, it was just
Incredible.
so well executed. I mean, there were a few things here and there, but it's a maiden voyage, so I expect like a few things here and there to
Yeah,
be a
dining
little rough.
service. Our dining service was not great.
They
We'll
ran
put
out
it
of
there. Yeah.
they ran out of a couple of special things for Haunted Mansion Parlor before we even set sail on the
That-
maiden.
yeah.
But those are like, compared to what was going on in the Wish. I will just say to you and your listeners, if you have not gotten a chance to experience a maiden voyage on Disney Cruise Line, you've got like 5 more opportunities headed your way, and
True.
it is unbelievable, and they always just like, they really pull out I'm always impressed at the special little things that they do. The stateroom gifts this time were just really
Really
cool.
good.
Every night we
It
had a new
sounded
gift
like it.
from the Treasure, and then
Mhm.
they had the Muppets. They had the
Yeah, I know.
Muppets on the maiden voyage, and I was like,
And that's like not a thing. You
I'm
do
here
not.
for
I mean,
this.
you get the Midship Detective Agency, which is
Mhm.
that sort of scavenger hunt
Right,
interactive thing on the Dream and the Fantasy. You can do a Muppets themed one, but there's no actual interacting. There's no like Muppets on stage. We had Muppets on stage, and Muppeteers
Mhm.
were special guests on our show, and they did a performance, and then they did a couple of other special video appearances and one appearance in the Grand Hall. They do. And we also had Don Ducky Williams,
Yeah.
who is a famous Disney artist, who came and did a presentation about how he became a Disney artist and was drawing, and they gifted through
Yeah, sorry you
raffle,
didn't
but
win.
we didn't win. They gifted through raffle, his drawings. I think like 17 of his drawings. There's some really cool experiences that they do offer on maiden voyages that are special. But honestly, whatever sailing you can get on, with Disney Cruise Line is generally going to be a good sailing as
Yeah.
far as I'm concerned.
Right.
Yeah. We're just a few days away from sailing on the
Yeah,
fantasy
Fantasy.
again, so we're excited
Oh,
for that.
nice.
Yeah, going back to see Soul Duo.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. They're
Good
still
friends
there.
Paul
They're
and
great.
Sonia. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, they're on. They're great. I
Yeah,
always
yeah.
enjoy them.
Yeah, we met them on the Panama Canal in March of 2020.
Oh,
We were on that COVID
you were
cruise.
on that COVID
we
cruise.
were on that cruise. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Well, the
What an
Fantasy was our
experience.
first ship. That was the first ship we sailed on, and I will say, most relaxing cruise I've ever been on was the the New Year's Eve cruise we just did on the Fantasy. Because I got on the ship and I said, "Oh my God, we've done everything. We know everything. Like
We don't
this
have
ship,
to do anything.
I don't
Yeah.
have to do
Yeah.
anything, and so I'm just going to go sit by the pool and have a pair of 75 at night in Skyline and call it good."
I still ran around to do a lot of the things because that's just me. But it was a very relaxing cruise. We had just
Nice.
gotten off the Maiden. We had a
Mhm.
day at Kennedy Space Center and then got on the Fantasy. So it was
Nice.
it was super nice.
Nice.
And New Year's. We haven't done
Yeah.
New Year's yet on
Yeah.
board a ship. We've done other holidays, not New Year's. How was that?
Yeah, it's great. I mean, they do 2 different countdowns typically. They somewhat depends on where you are in the world and if they can do fireworks and whatnot. But they did 2 different countdowns on our ship. We were out in the Atlantic, and we were actually on Atlantic Standard Time, which is what like St. Thomas is on. An hour ahead of the East Coast. At 8 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time, there was a party basically from 7 to 8 p.m. in the atrium that was, a dance party with the characters, and then
Pandemonium, utter
it
pandemonium.
was very crowded. And then they did a countdown, like a minute long countdown at 8 p.m. and did Happy New Year. And then with confetti, of course, and of course the Fab Five and the captain and the cruise director. And then from 11 p.m. to midnight, there was a deck party also with the characters, again, kind of a dance party. And then they did the countdown about a minute before, it start midnight. And at midnight, and when we hit 1, all of a sudden fireworks shooting off from the ship, of course, from both the front and the back of the ship on the starboard side, and we had a fantastic fireworks sea show. And they had handed out champagne flutes, the corksicle champagne flutes that said Disney Cruise Line Happy New Year 2025. It was super. It's just a really fun experience. And everybody was pretty much dressed up for New Year's. Lots of sparkles. They had changed. Formal night was originally, if you had looked at the itinerary, would have been a different night. They switched formal night, became New Year's Eve. And we had a New Year's Eve menu. So it was, similar to the Christmas menu or the Thanksgiving menu, with, I think, one difference. I think we had a filet on the menu that is not usually on the Christmas menu. But yeah, so really fun to celebrate New Year's Eve on board and to get a little dressed up, take some pictures, have a little champagne, cider or Cloudum, I think it was for the kids. But it's always a fun. It's always a fun experience. We love celebrating really any of the holidays on board. We've done Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's now, and we enjoy all of them.
Nice,
great.
Nice.
Yeah, we've been talking specifically about doing a New Year's.
Yeah,
so we're hearing you were on it. Kind of excited us to hear that.
For sure.
Well, we could talk to you about Disney cruising for hours and hours and hours, but you've been way too generous with your time already. So please, before you get out of here, let everybody know where they can find you. Sam, Brian, DCL Duo, where can they find your show? Where can they follow you on social media?
The easiest way to find all the places we are is to go to dclduo.com. That links to everything. It's got a link off to our podcast. It's got a link off to all of our social media. It's got a link off to our Substack. We have a newsletter that we publish occasionally. It's got a link off to our YouTube channel. You can find the show anywhere you listen to podcasts. We put out 2 shows a week, one live show that we do on YouTube that we then syndicate out to our podcast channel, and then one recorded episode each week. So you can find us there. We're on Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, and Facebook.
Yeah.
And so you can find us there. We are on Instagram and Threads at DCL_Duo, and we are on the other platforms at DCL Duo. So yeah, that's how you can find us.
Very cool. Well, if you haven't checked them out, even if you've cruised before many times, Disney or otherwise, if you haven't, you want to learn all about Disney Cruise Line, you're not going to find. They are, at least on one poll that we saw, the #1 Disney Cruise podcast. I think we're number 5. I don't know how we're even in the same galaxy as you, but we are there. But they literally, that is an accurate posting of them. They are the #1 Disney Cruise Line podcast. Again, thank you for being so generous with your time, Brian, Sam, DCL Duo. Thanks again for coming on the show.
Thank you
Thanks so much for
having
having us.
Our pleasure.